This is a guest essay by Shmuley Botiach, a rabbi and author.
It has been, to put it mildly, a very interesting summer for me. Everywhere I went, in Europe and now even in my own home in the New York, New Jersey area, I was confronted with a rising tide of hostility, intimidation, and outright violence, directed against me for one reason. I am a visible Jew in the public eye who fights for his people. Since I lived in Western Europe as rabbi at Oxford University for 11 years, I speak every summer in communities all over that continent, which is filled with millennia of Jewish pain. In Vienna, I was physically assaulted in the very heart of St. Stephen's Square by an Islamist mob who recognized me as I walked by a Free Palestine rally, something we saw in virtually every European city we visited. The assault became international news when I was surrounded by 10 Austrian police who treated me as an instigator rather than a victim, of which there is some truth. I instigated the assault by wearing a yarmulke in a European capital, something that few Jews dare today, especially in the city where Hitler learned his anti-Semitism. The assault was brutal and humiliating, and the police who forced my wife and I to go give a statement for 2 hours on Shabbat only climbed down after, it seemed, they began to understand that this would become an international incident, heavily covered by global media. Once the story hit the front page of Euronews with the headline, "Prominent U.S. Rabbi Assaulted at Rally in Vienna Questions Police Actions," I received a letter of apology from a senior government minister. But Austria still hasn't arrested my assailants. The case is ongoing. On a European river cruise where I was doing research on the First Crusade and Second Crusade for my new book about the origins of annihilator anti-Semitism, my family and I were subject to a torrent of complaints from a group of Australians who raged about our alleged Jewish special treatment, because we were the lucky ones who were served congealed tofu glue while they feasted nightly on sirloin steak. Yes, even that got their backs up. Imagine it. On a ship meant to bring people together, the old poison of anti-Semitism reared its head, dressed up in the language of grievance. Everywhere I traveled, I saw the same sight. Free Palestine marches choking the streets of European capitals. From Paris to Frankfurt, from Basel to Toledo, masses of people waved Hamas flags and shouted slogans that demonized Israel, while ignoring the October 7th massacre. What shocked me most was not just the scale of the protests, but the way in which they normalized hatred of Jews in broad daylight, with police and politicians usually turning a blind eye. Meanwhile, my inbox, my phone, and my social media feeds filled with death threats. Threats against me. Threats against my family. Threats that spilled over from the anonymity of the internet into the reality of my life. Being outspoken against Hamas and anti-Semitism has made me a target many times before, but this summer the intensity was different. The hate was more brazen, more unrestrained, more determined to silence me. And now, shockingly, it has followed me back to New York, to the supposed sanctuary of Manhattan and one of its prestigious luxury towers, Waterline Square, where I was threatened with punitive legal action for a memorial service for Shani Luke, one of October 7th's most famous victims. What Hamas did to Shani Luke's body on October 7th was barbarism. What Waterline Square has done to her memory is obscenity. On October 7th, 2023, the Jewish people endured their darkest day since the Holocaust. Hamas terrorists poured into Israel, murdering 1,200 innocents, mutilating bodies, kidnapping hostages, and unleashing carnage. The most famous victim was Shani Luke, a 22-year-old German-Israeli woman, full of vitality and promise. Murdered at the Nova Music Festival, she was desecrated by Hamas, her half-naked body paraded in the back of a pickup truck through Gaza. Billions saw the photograph, which was later chosen by the Associated Press as the photograph of the year. It shocked the conscience of humanity. Shani became, arguably, the most infamously violated woman in the history of the world. the very symbol of Jewish suffering, inhumanity, and Hamas barbarity. I dedicated a Torah to Shani a few months after her murder. Nissim Luke described the catastrophe that befell him in words no father should have to utter. Quote, "My daughter, Shani Luke, was murdered by Hamas at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. Her death and the brutal way the murder was exploited by her killers made her one of the most widely recognized victims of that dark day, the deadliest for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. The image of her body, paraded through the streets of Gaza, seared itself into the world's conscience. The world remembers Shani Luke, but Waterline Square decided that her memory was a problem. On November 4th, New York may get its own version of Vienna's Karl Lueger, the notorious anti-Semitic mayor of Vienna, who was Hitler's hero. If far-left candidate Zohran Mamdani becomes mayor of New York City, the Jewish community and those concerned with Jewish interests should be alert to several developments that could significantly impact their relationship with city governance. Mamdani supports divesting New York City's pension funds from Israeli-linked investments, aligned with the broader boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, though he hasn't endorsed full divestment from Israel altogether. If implemented, this could reduce financial ties between New York's public sector and Israel, destabilizing long-standing economic and political connections. Mamdani abased himself with his disgusting handling of the controversial phrase, "globalize the Intifada." He framed it as a symbolic call for Palestinian human rights, rather than what it actually is, a public call to murder Jews. The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum and multiple Jewish leaders condemned his comparison of the term to Jewish resistance during World War II. While Mamdani purports to support Israel's right to exist, he declined to denounce a Democratic Socialists of America resolution that advocates expulsion of members who are not, quote, strongly anti-Zionist. And he passionately supports BDS, which is the call for the economic destruction of Israel. This is why Jews of New York and New Jersey must answer the call to fight for their people. And New York City itself must confront how, in its heart, a Jewish memorial was treated as a violation. Hamas tried to erase Shani Luke by desecrating her body. They failed. She became the face of October 7th. Waterline Square tried to erase her memory by threatening a rabbi. They too will fail. I will not be silent, not in Gaza, not in Manhattan, not anywhere. Shani Luke deserves to be remembered with dignity. Every prayer, every candle, every act of remembrance is defiance against erasure. Waterline Square failed the test of decency. New York is failing the test of protecting its Jewish citizens. And if some 2 million Jews who live in New York cannot defeat an unapologetic Jew hater like Mamdani, then we deserve to ask if we have learned anything whatsoever from the Holocaust.